Updating a model midway through its life cycle is an efficient way for car manufacturers to drive more sales without incurring the costs of developing a whole new model. However, the degree of those updates can vary from bold and brave to blink and you'll miss it. Well, here we have the recently updated Vauxhall Corsa, and I think it's fair to say Vauxhall have gone down the bold and brave route. And in this Car Guru UK review, we're going to look at what the changes are, and we're going to drive not just this petrol model, but also the Corsa Electric. As ever, if you are thinking of buying a Corsa or indeed any car, or if you want to sell your current car, you can do all of those things at cargurus.co.uk, where you'll also find hundreds of useful car buying guides and reviews. Right, back to the Corsa, starting with its new grille. This new grille treatment definitely looks more assertive. It really lifts the front of the Corsa. The only thing I would say with it, and this applies to any Vauxhall with this visor grille treatment, is that when you get the black badge on the black grille, it's not particularly easy to see. It makes it quite hard to identify these cars, particularly when you're a bit further away. But anyway, overall, much better looking than the pre-facelift model. Other changes in terms of design, not so different as you come around the side of the car, really just new wheel designs. And then at the back of the car, the main difference you're going to notice is Corsa, now spelt out across the boot lid here. In terms of boot capacity, 309 litres in the petrol model. That's actually pretty competitive for the class. If you go for the Corsa Electric, note that the boot capacity drops to 267 litres, which is actually not so good for this class of car. I'm going to open this door here, partly to show they're not massive, these rear doors. It's quite a small opening. And then I'm going to go around and you can see how much space we have in the back. And then once I'm in the back, as you can probably see, with difficulty getting my size 10s under there, it is also a little bit on the small side. So I'm 5'11" and I've set the driver's seat for me, and I've also lifted it up a bit so I can get my feet under. Legroom is just about okay, headroom is just about okay, but yeah, overall it's perhaps a bit tight back here. Now, interior wise, how you perceive this new Corsa, I think is going to depend on whether you're coming to it from one of its rivals, in which case it's okay. Design wise it looks fine. There are lots of sort of hard plastics around here. Or if you come to it from a previous generation of Corsas, in which case I think this is going to be a revelation, because it does look very fresh and modern. You have, as you'd expect, a decent amount of adjustment in the steering wheel to get a good driving position. For this facelift, there's a new centre to the steering wheel. There's a new gear knob here, which I don't know, not so keen on that, but personal taste. And of course, it wouldn't be a facelift without an upgraded infotainment system. So you get the 7-inch digital dials here, and then this is a 10-inch system, and it has pretty much all the things you'd expect of a modern infotainment system in terms of Apple CarPlay, Android Auto. That's wireless on mid-spec and above. It also has over-the-air software updates, and it has natural voice recognition if you say, "Hey Vauxhall," which is probably now going to interrupt me if it's working properly. "Hey Vauxhall." Okay, maybe we need to work on that one. The system itself, yeah, I mean, it's okay. It's responsive. The graphics, not the sharpest, but they're absolutely fine. And of course, if you're just using your smartphone to mirror, then you can get away with most things that way. So in terms of how the Corsa drives, not much has changed actually. So the engine in the petrol model is a carryover. It's the 1.2 litre 3-cylinder unit, and there are 3 versions of this. So you can either have it without a turbo, in which case you get 75 horsepower and a 5-speed manual gearbox, or you can have it with a turbo, in which case you can have either 100 horsepower or 130 horsepower, and either a 6-speed manual like we've got here, or an 8-speed automatic, depending on which trim you go for. So this car is in GS trim, that's the mid-spec, and it's the 100 horsepower engine. And I have to say, it's a really sweet little engine. It's, for a start, very tractable at low revs. So this, you can do 25 miles an hour in 4th gear if you want to, if you're pootling around town. So that's where I am now. Foot down, and it picks up and it pulls 1500 RPM, 2000, 2500, turbo comes in, and you get some nice strong acceleration. 0 to 60, 9.9 seconds. So it's not particularly fast, but actually if you work through the gears a bit, it's quite a fun little engine. It gets a bit coarse at high revs, but generally speaking, I think this is probably the sweet spot in the Corsa range. A mild hybrid version of the Corsa will arrive in 2024, marking a first for this car and another potentially useful boost in efficiency. So what about the ride and handling of this petrol-powered Corsa? Well, it's not as much fun as a Fiesta, that's what we always say, but it's pretty decent actually. It feels quite light on its feet and quite, fairly lively. The steering's pretty good actually. Vauxhalls sometimes have slightly light rubbery steering. The Corsa doesn't. It's actually quite an enjoyable little car to drive, and the ride's okay. It's not too bouncy. It is a bit noisy is the only thing. You do get quite a lot of road noise in here. Other observations about driving this Corsa. So one, in manual cars, the footrest to the left of the clutch, the gap to get there is a little bit narrow. If you have wide feet, that's going to get quite annoying. But otherwise, this is a really easy, enjoyable little car to drive. Good visibility. Obviously it's small, so placing it on the road is really simple, just as it should be in a Super Mini really. Then of course there's the Corsa's other party trick, the fact it's available as an all-electric model. And just like that, we have switched to the Corsa Electric. Now, a couple of things to know about this car in terms of the facelift. One is pre-facelift, it was known as the Corsa E. Post-facelift, it has become the Corsa Electric. And there are now two versions of the Corsa Electric available, whereas before there was just one. So the first is a carryover from before, and the second is the long range. So the carryover uses a 50 kilowatt hour battery, which is good for an official range of 222 miles. The long range has a 51 kilowatt hour battery, and that will get you 246 miles from a full charge. Now, interestingly, this car is on 96% charge at the moment, and it's showing an indicated range of 242 miles. Obviously, that's very close to its official claim range, which is really nice to see. As well as its extra range, the long range also gets another 20 horsepower for a total of 156. That's enough to reduce the 0 to 62 mph time from 8.9 seconds to 8.2 seconds. In both models, you can use a rapid charger to boost the battery from 10 to 80% charge in around 30 minutes, while on a 7 kilowatt home wall box, a full charge will take around 7 hours. Now, even with the extra horsepower, the Corsa Electric is still no hot hatch. However, the performance is good, and one thing I really like about this Stellantis drivetrain and the way they set it up in the EVs is that if you select a different drive mode down here, so there's three modes, there's Eco, Normal and Sport, and it changes the power output. So in Eco mode, it restricts it obviously to extend the range. It also reduces the power of the climate control. If you put it in Normal, you get a bit more power. And it's Normal that the official claim range is based on. And in Normal mode, it feels completely fine for all driving, even Eco is fine in town. But then if you go into Sport mode, that's when you get the full power output, and all of a sudden, you get much sharper throttle response. And yeah, it's quite good fun, the Corsa Electric. The other thing to note is no matter which driving mode you are in, Eco, Normal, Sport, if you put your foot down all the way to the floor, you do get the full power out, but that's obviously a safety feature in case you need the power to get out of trouble or do an overtake or something. In terms of the rest of the Corsa Electric driving experience, similar strengths and weaknesses to the petrol model, to be honest. So you still do get a bit of road noise. Obviously the drivetrain is very quiet being electric, but you do hear the tyre noise. But otherwise, it's a nice car to drive. It feels responsive. It responds well to the steering. Obviously, very good visibility, easy to drive. It's a good car. If all of this has you thinking the Corsa Electric is the better car, you'd be right. But it's also, of course, more expensive. So finance deals for the Corsa are obviously going to evolve as the facelift model comes onto the market, and we know that Vauxhall is going to be pretty aggressive, particularly with the electric, to try and get consumers to see that you can actually, if you take into account running costs and you extend the PCP term, you can get much closer in terms of monthlies between this and a petrol car than you've been able to in the past. That said, if you look at overall retail price, there's still about a £10,000 difference between an equivalently spec'd petrol model and an electric. and that does still seem like a lot, doesn't it? And perhaps even more telling is that if you go for a top spec long range Corsa electric, you're actually only £1,500 off the starting price of a Tesla Model 3. Perhaps it'd be better then to look at prices for used pre-facelift electric Corsas. Head to cargurus.co.uk and you'll find plenty of these at around the £11,000 to £15,000 price point, all relatively low mileage and just 2 or 3 years old. Of course, the fact that a used car is cheaper to buy than a new one is not new news. However, I think the point here is that electric cars are depreciating really quite heavily at the moment, and actually that makes them look like really good buys on the used market. And of all of them, I think the Corsa E at 11 to 12 grand is perhaps the best of all. I think that's an outstanding car for the money if you want to switch to EVs. As for the rest of this update, I think it's fair to say it has been successful. I think it looks a lot smarter with that new grille at the front, and the interior upgrades all add a little bit more appeal. And of course the Corsa has a lot of competitors, not least the Peugeot E208 with which it shares a platform, but I think that this car does enough to continue with its success. And it is a success, remember. This is one of the UK's best-selling cars, and I think these updates are only going to help that. Thanks for watching. Please do remember to subscribe to this channel, and of course head to cargurus.co.uk to find lots of great deals from top-rated dealers on your next car.